Have you ever wondered what Jesus would reveal if he showed you the truth behind fame? A 16-year-old girl died and returned with a shocking message. Trump, Epstein, and celebrities who sell their souls are part of a hidden spiritual system. What she saw on the other side will leave you speechless. Like, subscribe to the channel, and comment here which city you're watching from. This story needs to be shared. My name is Alyssa Monroe. I'm 17 years old. I'm from Texas. And until that day, I just wanted to sing. It was the finals of the school talent show, and I was about to perform in front of the entire school. My song, a cover of a pop artist I've always admired, the kind who shines like gods on stage. That afternoon, the auditorium was packed. My parents were in the front row, my best friend filming the whole thing for TikTok. All I wanted was to hit that final note and imagine that, who knows, some famous producer would see my video. I lived for this. I posted covers on YouTube, studied every move of the pop divas. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be adored, but my body had other plans. I didn't know I had a hereditary heart condition, silent as a snake. In the middle of the performance, seconds before the last note, I felt a strange shock in my chest, as if an invisible hand squeezed my heart with an iron grip. My microphone dropped. My knees buckled. The world went black, but my conscience, she didn't delete it. It was as if I had been pulled back from the stage of reality. First, just darkness, then a silence so profound it made me cry. Of peace. I was floating. There was no pain, no fear. It was as if my soul was free from the lie that is the physical world. It was then that something changed. I saw lights on the horizon, but they weren't like the ones mentioned in stories about heaven and angels. They were stage lights, dressing room lights, spotlights. It was as if I had passed through an invisible wall and fallen into a parallel world where fame was the spiritual currency. There was a crowd watching what looked like a mega show, but what chilled me to the core was that all the famous faces were there, smiling, dancing, posing, and their souls were empty. They were like perfect dolls. Their eyes shone with beauty, but there was no life there, only repetition. Worse, they were being controlled. Behind the stage, shadowy figures, humanoid creatures covered by a kind of black mist, pulled invisible threads connected to the bodies of celebrities. The smiles, the dances, the motivational speeches. Everything was staged by orders from entities we never met on Earth. You wanted to be like them, didn't you, Alyssa? That voice was not human. She came from all sides, and she was seductive, familiar. Now you'll see what they pay to shine. In that instant, I was sucked into a new dimension within that vision. A much worse place. I fell, but not to the ground. I fell silently, as if I were being sucked into a different gravity. And then I landed in a hall. It was beautiful at first glance. A golden hall with high ceilings, chandeliers that seemed made of liquid crystal, and mirrored walls that revealed perfect versions of whoever entered. But that beauty was fake. I felt it. The air was heavy as lead, and something inside me said, "This isn't heaven. This is a disguise." I saw people there, young, very young, some in stage costumes, makeup, nervous, others trembling, as if they'd just been dragged into a courtroom they didn't understand. And in the center of the room, a long black table, with figures seated on dark leather thrones. They didn't look human. They looked human, but their eyes didn't blink. Their smiles were cold, artificial, like masks. Power figures, men and women, business people, record label directors, social media owners, faces I was sure I'd seen at awards shows. In front of each guest, including a blonde girl who I swore was a Disney teen star, was a shiny contract. Literally, the paper emitted light, as if it had been written with white fire. And then I saw what nobody this. When one of these young women signed, a fragment of light came out of his chest, something pure, childlike, intimate, the part that laughed alone, that believed in true love, that said prayers before bed, that was taken as if it were payment. And at the same moment, a black line, like a thread of dark energy, connected to her heart, connecting her to the men at the table. The young woman's expression changed. Her eyes still shone, but now it was a practiced, empty glow. The transformation was spiritual and irreversible. I understood, at that moment, that fame, for many, was bought with parts of their soul, and that contract was not symbolic. It was a pact, literal, spiritual. It was then that I heard a name that gave me chills. Epstein. The word was whispered by one of the beings around the table, not with guilt, but with reverence, as if it were a title of power. And I saw a man being led by two others, tall, with empty eyes and a polite smile. Behind him, a vision opened like a rift in reality. It was Island, the same as all the headlines that sounded like conspiracy theories. But what I saw it was not a theory. It was a spiritual chamber, buried beneath that island, where the deepest pacts were sealed with the sacrifice of that which is most pure, innocence. Epstein was just a middleman, a priest of an elite occult cult. And the faces that laughed on the magazine covers, some of them had been there. I don't want to repeat what I saw, but I understood one thing with all the certainty of my spirit. Fame has an altar, and that altar demands sacrifice. When the view of the island faded, I was thrown into another scenario, as if I were passing through several layers of reality. Only now I was no longer in the gilded halls or on the glittering stages. I was backstage. It was a maze of dark, narrow, and stuffy corridors. The walls seemed to pulse as if they were made of flesh. There were red lights flashing from time to time, and I could hear muffled voices, distorted prayers, inverted chants, whispers in languages I didn't understand. But that left me with a queasy stomach. And then I saw something I will never forget, a recording studio. But what was being recorded was not music. Error message, programming, spell. Yes, spell. The lyrics were dictated by a hooded shadow, and the artist, a super famous rapper, read everything with glazed eyes, as if in a trance. He didn't know. He thought he was being inspired, but the inspiration came from another source. On the walls, monitors showed crowds dancing, children singing lyrics that glorified pain, lust, and despair. And every time someone consumed that content, a small flame was extinguished inside them. That's when I understood what Jesus meant when he said that fame was a spiritual poison. They don't just want attention, they want influence. They want control. They want to plant a seed in you from an early age. And they use idols for this. I walked into a room with mannequins. There were concert clothes, music video costumes, but the mannequins had faces. They were famous faces, frozen, inhuman. A figure appeared there, tall, wrapped in a cloak that seemed made of smoke and luxury. He had a changing face. Sometimes he was a Hollywood star, sometimes a record company executive, sometimes a politician, and he saw me. "You shouldn't be here, little one. But since you are, come see who really pulls the strings." He raised his hand and the wall behind me dissolved like wet paper, and I saw a throne, giant, made of canvas. Each screen displayed a social media feed, a reality show, a music video, a movie, all connected, each content spreading microdoses of darkness, not in an obvious way, but in a sneaky way. Don't be grateful. You are never enough. Buy more, show more, be envious, desire to be adored. It was a global cult, and at the top, in the center of it all, that entity smiled, not with teeth, but with desire, a desire as old as time. I want the souls, and they are coming of their own free will. I trembled, because I understood there that hell is not only after death, he's already on earth, in our feeds, in our idols, disguised as art, entertainment, and success. The hooded figure disappeared in the blink of an eye, like mist being sucked into an invisible hole, but the image of the throne made of canvas. It was engraved in me, and before I could breathe or protect myself, I was pulled again, this time to ceremony. It was as if I was watching a behind-the-scenes initiation. A crowd of young artists stood, all dressed in white. The room looked like a modern temple, with strange symbols on the walls, mixtures of religious icons, logos of famous brands, signs and hidden codes. In the center of the hall, a 5-pointed star made of liquid light slowly rotated on the floor. Each artist was called to the center, one by one, and before crossing, they had to repeat an oath. But it was not an oath of art. It was a pact of obedience, of silence, of surrender. "Are you ready to be worshipped?" a deep voice asked. "Yes," replied a young man with a hypnotized look. "Are you ready to be consumed?" said the voice. "Try." Are you ready to sacrifice what is purest within you? Break. Try. Each yes was followed by a burst of golden light, a light misleading, which looked divine, but left a smell of rust and burnt flesh in the air. And then, the transformation took place. White clothes turned black, pure expressions became arrogant, and a spiritual tattoo appeared on each one's chest, a symbol made of fame, gold, and darkness. I screamed. I wanted to stop them. I wanted to tell them they were being deceived, but no one listened to me. It was as if I were watching an eternal loop of soul perdition. That's when Jesus appeared again. He did not appear with trumpets or lightning. He appeared with a gentle glow, like the only true sound in a world of lies. His presence surrounded me like a shield, and everything around me seemed to freeze in time. The figures stopped, the ceremony fell silent, and the throne of screens trembled. He looked at me with tenderness and sadness. They don't know what they're doing. They think they are being promoted, when in fact they are being owned. He touched my shoulder, and in that instant, he made me feel the heart of every artist there. They were all broken. Everyone had a hole inside screaming for love, for acceptance, for worth. And in their desperation to fill that void, they accepted the false shine. The true light does not shout, Jesus said. It does not demand followers. It does not need contracts. The true light offers itself in silence and transforms through love. I fell to my knees, crying, because I understood what was behind the fame I so desired. It doesn't take you to heaven. It adorns you for the abyss. The vision of the ceremony was still burning in me when, without warning, the ground beneath my feet had fell apart like quicksand, and I was swallowed up in a whirlpool of shadow and silence. I floated for seconds, or maybe millennia, until my feet touched something solid again. I was on a beach, but it wasn't just any beach. Era the island, the one with the headlines, the whispers, the censored documents. Now, I saw with the eyes of my soul, and what I saw, it wasn't just a physical place. It was an open wound in the spiritual fabric of the earth, a modern altar where the most corrupt humanity kneels. The water around was too blue, but lifeless. The sky was beautiful, but fake, like a projection. And the ground whispered, thousands of muffled voices, crying out. The souls that had been wounded there still echoed. I saw a big white house on top of a hill. Powerful people descended from helicopters. Celebrities, politicians, billionaires. They wore masks, but not to hide their faces. It was to hide what had become of his eyes. They didn't come just for pleasure. They came to seal something, to level up. A man greeted them, tall, polite, elegant, era Epstein, but different from what was seen in the photos. Here he had a monstrous spiritual presence, as if every violated child, every wounded soul, every signed pact had become a suit of power armor around him. He spoke with soft words but each syllable was a blade. Welcome to the last gate. Those who pass through today will never return the same. Jesus appeared to me again, but now with tears in his eyes. He didn't need to explain it to me. I felt it. This island was the spiritual center of corruption in the modern world. A portal, a place where purity was violated to feed the kingdom of darkness. And those who desired ascension in this world had to offer something in return. That's when I saw a room below the house. It was like a crypt, lined with marble, luxurious. But in the center there was a kind of table, an altar. A group of people watched as a young pop star, known worldwide, one with dozens of hits, was led to the center. She trembled. She cried, but she couldn't resist. Around his neck, a spiritual collar, a bond that tied her to the system. Next to the altar, a contract. Next to the contract, a symbol drawn in blood. And when she laid her hand upon him, a blast of dark energy ripped through the room. The pact was sealed. The voice of Jesus echoed in my soul, without sound. This is where brilliance turns to darkness, where fame turns to slavery, where the right to rule on the world stage is paid for with innocence. I felt a metallic taste in my mouth. The air grew thick, because the truth was unbearable. Celebrities aren't stars, they're puppets. And this island is where the threads are attached to their souls. I didn't want to see anymore, but I couldn't look away. It was as if the entire sky was forcing me to witness what no one should see. It was my mission there, And the next scene made me understand how deep the rot behind fame was. I was taken to a new room, below the crypt where I saw the young artist seal her pact. It was a dark corridor, lit only by torches that had no fire but a greenish light, like plasma. I thought I was in hell, but Jesus made me understand. This is not hell. It's still earth. The difference? Here, the spiritual reality that the elites try to hide was fully exposed. The corridor took me to a kind of underground gallery. There were display cases, as if it were an art auction. But inside the display cases, there were no works. There were souls, fragments of human essence, living lights, some flickering, like candles about to go out, others strong, but bound by chains. Each soul had a name, a date, a signature. They all belonged to celebrities. But the scariest thing, they were being negotiated. I saw executives in impeccable suits, bankers, owners of media conglomerates, figures most people have never heard of, but who control everything. They pointed to certain souls and made offerings, tears, memories, access to the minds of millions. It was a spiritual market, the market that really runs Hollywood, and in the center of it all, a figure that until then I had not seen clearly, the true master of threads. It had no defined shape. Its contours were constantly changing. Sometimes it was a pop star, sometimes a CEO, sometimes a digital influencer, but its core was pure abyss. He fed on worship. The more likes, views, packed shows, awards, the stronger he became. And every time someone ordinary, like me, like you, put a famous person on a pedestal, a small spark of our energy flowed into that being. Modern worship has no altars. It has screens. And whoever is worshipped, often, has already been devoured from within. Jesus spoke to my mind with pain but also with authority. The souls sold here are not irreversible, but to be rescued, someone has to tell, someone has to break the spell, expose the system. It was then that he made me look at myself, and I saw my reflection in one of the shop windows. My own soul was flickering, because, without realizing it, I had also already started making deals, not with contracts, but with desires. Desire for fame, to be seen, to be adored. The trap starts long before the signature. It starts in the heart. I fell to my knees before the display window where my own soul flickered. It was like being punched in the spirit. I hadn't sold anything. I've never signed a contract. I've never been to a dark island. I've never seen a producer in my life. But the seed was already planted, and it was then that Jesus showed me the complete trap. It's not just celebrities who are at risk. We are all targets. I was taken to a new vision, an ordinary room, a teenager's room, my room. It was cozy, familiar, except for one thing. Each screen emitted dark energy. My cell phone, the television, the computer, even my younger brother's tablet, which was playing a harmless game. From these screens came out small, invisible strings, like spiderweb threads. They connected to hearts, to eyes, to thoughts. And at the other extreme, there was the same throne made of canvas that I saw at the beginning. They don't need you to come to them, Alyssa. They come to you. The songs, the series, the memes, the influencers. Everyone can carry microdoses of darkness, not to shock you, but to put you to sleep, to accustom your soul to emptiness, to make you feel that you need to be more, have more, appear more. And when you believe that, you have already signed the first line of the contract. I saw teenagers crying alone at night, their faces lit by the blue light of their cell phones, comparing themselves to celebrities who had perfect smiles, but empty souls. I saw girls trying to transform themselves into Instagrammable versions of themselves, without knowing they were slowly moving away from the inner light. I saw boys growing up believing that their value was in fame, in ostentation, in their bodies, in followers. And behind every seemingly fun piece of content, a dark purpose, disconnection from the spirit. Jesus showed me a spiritual fact. For every million views on a clip full of lust and pride, thousands of tiny cracks appear in the souls of those who watch it, and these cracks become passages. This is how darkness grows, he said, not with screams, but with songs, with selfies, with idols. The scariest thing? Many of the famous people don't even know. They were also deceived. They also started innocently, but they accepted the reins. And now they are horses ridden by something greater. We follow them. But who guides them? My chest hurt. Not from fear, but from a sadness so deep it took my breath away. I saw faces I loved, singers I followed, actresses I imitated, and I saw that they were all part of a larger network, not a conspiracy of men, but a spiritual, coordinated, active strategy. If the enemy cannot possess your body, he will try to possess your attention. It was at that moment that I understood my purpose. I wasn't just there as a witness. I was the warning, and I still had more to see. The next vision tore me apart inside. I was in a hallway lined with doors. Each one seemed to pulse with a different energy, some cold, some hot, some desperate. Jesus didn't say anything. He just led me through one of the doors. Inside, I saw those who tried to get out. Celebrities who, by some miracle of conscience, woke up. Men and women who realized they were trapped in something that felt like success, but was actually a cage made of gold and applause. I saw an actress, beautiful, award-winning, adored, kneeling in a hotel room surrounded by handwritten notes. God, free me. If anyone is listening, get me out of this. I'm just a doll with too many strings. And I saw when she tried to speak. She did a live stream. She cried. She said there were things the public didn't know, that everything was fake. The next day, the internet called her crazy. The advisor declared emotional exhaustion, and the industry buried her alive with silence. They don't kill bodies, Alyssa, said Jesus. They kill reputations, they kill voices, and if necessary, they kill in secret. I was taken to another room. There was a legendary singer, the one everyone said was enlightened, but what I saw was a broken man trembling with empty eyes. He couldn't sleep, because every time I closed my eyes, the faces of the packs came to seek him. He tried to leave, tried to drop everything, but the spiritual contracts he had signed had clauses beyond the paper. With each show that was canceled, dreamed of screams. With each song he refused to record, a female voice cried in the back of his mind. He was tormented. And finally I saw something that cut me like a blade. A young influencer, new, beautiful, talented. She was gone. News reports said he needed some time offline. But Jesus showed me the truth. She had refused a ritual. He refused to participate in a special party where the most powerful, celebrated success, a partir d'ali, was spiritually hunted. Nothing physical has happened to her. Not yet. But the opportunities disappeared. The public has forgotten her. The algorithms buried it. And every time she tried to go back, an invisible weight crushed his spirit. That's the price of trying to leave without faith, said Jesus. They can escape them, but only if they go to the light. Only if they break with everything. Only if they are willing to lose everything. I was shaking, because now I knew. Fame has no easy way out. There is no middle ground. Or you serve the truth, or you are used to propagate the lie. Do you want to know why I showed you all this, Alyssa? Jesus looked me in the eyes, firmly, because you're still alive, and you can still choose. The presence of Jesus enveloped me like an armor of peace, but what I had seen was breaking me inside. I was on a spiritual threshold. I was no longer just a spectator. I was part of history. Jesus then took me to the top of a spiritual mountain. From her, I could see the whole world. But what I saw, it was not the physical world. It was the world as he really is. A war board between light and darkness. Above every city, an invisible battle. Entities tried to influence hearts. Millions of people walked the streets, eyes glued to screens, without knowing that they were being shaped. The music, the fashion, the trends, nothing was spontaneous. Everything was strategy. I saw a family having dinner while a TV in the background was showing a grotesque reality show. Small dark threads came out of the screen and attached themselves to family members, not as possession, but as invisible suggestions. Compare yourself, feel ugly, wish more, mock what is pure, ignore what is eternal. Every thought was a seed, and then Jesus showed the other side. Small points of light on the map, people kneeling, parents praying for their children, young people rejecting the false glow, mothers turning off the Wi-Fi and lighting a candle. These lights chased away the shadows. The war is not over yet, Jesus said, but few see that it exists. It was at that moment that he showed me my own future life, not as a closed line, but as two possible roads. In the first one, I followed my plan. Sing, go up, go viral, and possibly be invited to a contract. It was fast, irresistible, and for a while, sweet. But then, the nightmares began. The light in my eyes disappeared, the emptiness grew, and finally, my face was in the windows of the soul market. On the second road, I was talking to a crowd, but not singing, witnessing, telling exactly what I saw. Some called me crazy, others hated me, but there were eyes being opened, young people crying, families gathering, wires being cut. You won't remember everything, Jesus told me, but you will remember the pain and the mission. He came closer. He touched my forehead, and he said something that echoed like thunder inside me. You are my witness. Tell them that worldly fame is the slavery of the soul, that the brilliance that enchants them hides invisible hooks. Tell them I love them, that they can still choose, but time is running out. At that time, I began to feel the call back, as if my soul was being pulled by a rope of light, tearing me apart again, because everything in me, I wanted to stay there, but I knew it wasn't the end of my journey yet. Going back was the worst pain I've ever felt. Not physical, although my body ached like it had been hit by a train. It was the pain of moving away from absolute truth, from presence, from home. When I opened my eyes, the light was white, cold. An ambulance siren echoed. Agitated faces floated above me. She's back. Pulse stabilizing. Call the parents. But none of it made sense. My soul still cried out for the light, for home, for him. They were resuscitating me. I had died. Literally. My heart stopped on the school stage for 4 minutes and 36 seconds. I was declared clinically dead, but I came back. No after effects, no medical explanation. Only I knew the reason. During the days that followed, the doctors smiled. My parents cried. The school turned into chaos. Everyone said I was a miracle, but no one had any idea what I actually saw. And that's why I'm telling you this now, because Jesus sent me to say, report, to warn. You need to understand that the world of fame is a farce with the aesthetics of paradise. Behind the scenes, the music videos, the million-dollar contracts, there is a system that buys souls, that sells values, that consumes innocence. And the worst, they want yours too. Even if you don't want fame, you just want their lifestyle. Just allow your music, your attitudes, your values, or lack thereof, mold your heart. I saw beloved artists being controlled by entities. I saw talented young people exchanging light for stages. I saw contracts that looked like invitations, but were spiritual handcuffs. I saw Epstein. I saw the island. I saw the pacts. I saw the blood. And I saw Jesus weeping for every soul that was lost in this. If you still think celebrities live the dream life, it's because you've never seen the backstage of darkness. They are not idols. They are victims who have become weapons. And you can still choose. Choose the light. Choose to disconnect from the show. Choose to guard your heart, because what's at stake is not your fame. It's your eternity. And I know that because I've been on the other side. And he told me to come back just to let you know. If you enjoyed this beautiful spiritual testimony, please leave a like, comment, share your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.